Uncle Dan,
Hey!
the future is murky.
No, the future is so bright I gotta wear shades.
The past is unknown.
The present
well-
is bullshit.
I think I had that reversed, actually. But
No,
fair
the
enough.
The
The past is unknown.
The past is unknown. History
So-
is written by the victors.
But there are those among us who...
You know, when I was a kid, when I was a kid and people said history was written by the victors, for some reason, I thought it meant by people named Victor.
Yeah.
I was
All good historians have the same name.
I was super dumb.
You were dumb.
Well, is doing a lot of lifting in that sentence.
Well, Victor will decide eventually.
But there are those who maybe the past, the future, the present is not so murky.
Yeah.
And I can't believe we've not talked about this before, but Uncle Mark, you might have some insight in this.
Yes, I've gazed into the future or the now, whatever. Well, now is the future. Now. Anyway. So, as our cherished listeners may know, I, Uncle Mark, am the senior and therefore most honored of the three uncles. I think I have, 6 or 7 years on you guys? And
At least.
At least.
How old are you? You're
leap
like
years.
62, right?
I'm 52, yeah.
Jesus
So,
Christ. Mark, you have your will written out, right?
Oh, I've had, I grew up a queer kid in the Mormon church. I think I wrote my will when I was 11. And as the senior Gen Xer, there were 4 things in the popular culture of the 70s and 80s that made me think that made me think would be much bigger issues in my life than they have turned out to be. And here is the list of those things in order of most terrifying to least. So please, no children or pregnant women are allowed to listen beyond this point. Thing the first, the Bermuda Triangle.
Terrifying.
Yes. Oh my God, that was the thing in the 1970s, you guys. I was so afraid of it. And to make matters worse, my first ever airplane flight when I was 11 years old was to go with my dad on a business trip to Hamilton, Bermuda.
Oh,
That's true. The first time I ever went on a plane, the mix of excitement and terror was overwhelming. It was like touching the face of God. Of all the triangles, I was led to believe the Bermudan one was the hungriest one. Okay, thing the second. Quicksand.
yep. I knew it was coming.
Quicksand may have been the leading cause of death in all of 1970s television.
It was.
There was a period where I was loath to walk on anything other than solid concrete because I thought the world was 99% human-hungry sucking mud.
I recently, just last night, Andrea and I rewatched the Swiss Family Robinson. Which,
there was quicksand in that, wasn't there?
There was some quicksand in that.
Well,
There was also apparently an Indonesian island that had ostriches and zebras, but that's okay.
Well, it's gone now. It
wasn't so much mud as it was just kind of like soft sand that you just, over the course of several hours,
just slowly died.
the
mostly
elevator
in
took you
movies
down.
and TV, it was just brown water.
Exactly.
Right. I should point out, I have never, in all of my travels as an adult person, ever actually come across quicksand. I know it exists, but I haven't done
No, it doesn't exist.
it. Doesn't it?
I don't think it's real.
Oh, we're going to get emails.
There are mud pits that I think are, maybe that was based on.
And there are sinkholes, but I don't think that there's actual quicksand. I did a little bit of cursory and not very reliable research, and I think that it's not real. Anyway, go on.
All right, we'll get emails. Thing number the third, chloroform. If you're under 40, you've likely never heard of this magic shit. But in almost every episode of every show that was on every channel between 1975 and 1984, a guy in a black turtleneck with black leather strangler's gloves and aviators would put a tiny bit of fluid from a little brown bottle onto a handkerchief, walk up behind Angie Dickinson or Angela Lansbury in a phone booth, just touch their face with it, and boom, they were out like a Tiffany desk lamp. Never face away from the door in a phone booth if you wish to remain unkidnapped in the third act, you guys.
Goodbye, millennial listeners.
And lastly, and most importantly for today, the thing I was convinced would be a serious presence in all of our lives here in 2021 was Nostradamus.
Oh, you predicted wrong.
I did. And according to pretty much every television show on at the time, the bowl-gazing prophet had and would continue to predict every major world event with staggering accuracy from beyond his grave, which had been cooling for over 400 years prior to the Leonard Nimoy narrated paranormal and cryptozoology series In Search Of,
Oh, my
that
God.
was so dominated my Saturday afternoon television consumption.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember that?
I do.
I never saw it.
It's so crap. I mean, I love Leonard Nimoy, but he was just so underproduced.
I think I'm just too young for that.
There was the Star Trek cast did some wandering after the show was canceled and before they started making the movies. But who hasn't at least vaguely heard of this mysterious and totally 100% accurate prognosticator of everything that has happened over the last 500 years? Well, let me gaze into the mists of the past and tell you. Michel de Nostradamus was born in 1503. He later Latinized the family's name to Nostradamus. The Jewish side of his family had converted to Christianity a couple of generations before his arrival, so they may have been some of those highly suspect new Christians we talked about with the Goa Inquisition last week.
Yeah. I don't trust him.
Anyway, he got married, had kids, then his wife and kids died, most likely of the bubonic plague. That was all the rage at the time, though it's not quite clear. He wanted to train to become a physician, such as they were at the time, and enrolled in university shortly before being kicked out for practicing apothecary on the side. Basically, he was into herbalism and tinctures and things like that.
Oh, he was crossing the streams right there.
Yeah, and for some reason that was expressly forbidden specifically in the university's charter.
Weird.
So he never actually earned whatever sort of barbaric medical degree was on offer at the time, despite practicing, quote, medicine for the rest of his life. He remarried. He had 6 kids who seemed to have survived, and he got very into astrology. Now, not only was it incredibly common for a person to be both a, quote, doctor and an astrologist at the same time, astrology and predictions, I was kind of stunned to find out, were not expressly considered heresy, and a practitioner would generally be ignored by the Inquisition, which was all the rage at the time, so long as necromancy and witchcraft were not part of making the old star charts. So weirdly, Nostradamus was considered kind of a shitty astrologer by his many competitors.
Well, there you go.
There was, after all, a, quote, science or standard practice of it, meaning most astrologers would have come up with similar star charts when they plugged in the basics of the person's birth. But for some reason, Nostradamus never plugged in the person's place of birth or the time of day of their birth and would get wildly different results, which that's just bad science, guys.
Right?
So he began to write annual almanacs that would lay out the known planetary events of the year, like eclipses, stuff like that, and what house, what planet was going to be in what house at what time of the year. And then he'd pen some little predictions in the back pages. For whatever reason, these became extremely popular, even amid a sea of popular almanacs, horoscopes, and predictions that were already on the market. But based on that success, he published his most famous work, The Prophecies, a very bizarre, non-chronological pile of quatrains, which are weird little 4-line poems collected into groupings of 100 that don't necessarily have anything to do with each other, called centuries. And while the work was dismissed by many, it caught the attention of the Queen, Catherine de' Medici. She summoned him to the palace where he assumed he was going to be beheaded. Instead, he was asked to draw horoscopes for her children. This brought him larger acceptance among France's very important powdered wig class. Anyway, he got old, he got sick, he died, and that was that for Nostradamus.
Did he know that he was going to die? Did he see it coming?
There's of course all his devotees say that he predicted his own death, but there's absolutely no evidence for that.
I'm gonna go on the record right now and predict my own death.
Yeah, I'm gonna die. I'll get back to you with the date after it happens.
Yeah.
The legend looms larger than the man ever did. And remember when I said earlier that his predictions about every major event in 5 centuries were dead on correct? Well, that was all bullshit. No,
right, of course.
Not a single one of Nostradamus's quatrains or, quote, predictions has ever been used to accurately predict an event before it happened. Never, ever, not once. Now, many...
if you're going to put that pressure on it, it has to be predicted before it happens?
Yeah,
Come on, man.
We're about to talk about postdictions.
Yeah.
Now, many of his predictions have been used to post-dict, which is actually a word, or to be retroactively clairvoyant of events after they occurred, which is great for the prediction business. And before I get into the actual quatrains, aside from being obtusely vague, they are extremely problematic for a couple of reasons. First, no original printing of the book, his book, The Prophecies, exists. There are some fairly contemporary copies made by other authors a few years after his death, but no originals, and those copies have significant differences from each other. Secondly, 16th century French was very different from modern French, even more than English was and is. So people doing lazy modern French dictionary translations of the quatrains come up with translations that are wildly different from the oldest texts we have, and of course, wildly different from each other as well. Okay, so here's some of the quatrains. There are nearly 1,000 in the Prophecies. You guys tell me what you think his devotees thought they predicted, or more accurately, post-dicted. Here's the first one. From the enslaved populace, songs, chants, and demands, while princes and lords are held captive in prisons. These will be in the future by headless idiots, be received as divine prayers. What do you think? Any thoughts on what that?
Zeppelins.
I'm going to go with Diana Ross.
Dan, you're actually warmer.
Damn it.
This is said to have been a prediction of the 1789 French Revolution.
Oh.
Yes, there would be princes and lords in jail, and there would be headless, quote, idiots, but for a man mindful of the wrath of both the monarchy and the Inquisition in the mid-16th century, and indeed anxious to curry favor with both, it's very unlikely he would label the future God-anointed but beheaded royalty headless idiots.
Right.
How about this one? Hercules, king of Rome and of Animarch, with the surname of the chief of Triple Gaul, Italy and the one of St. Mark to tremble, first monarch renowned above all. I mean, that's pretty obvious, right?
Is it the Pope?
The Little Mermaid.
Dan, warmer again.
God damn it.
This one is very, very clearly predicting France's World War II leader and then Prime Minister Charles de Gaulle.
Oh, okay. Perfect.
Yet other than the name commonality, Gaul, a word meaning the original French people, it has no other connection to de Gaulle. All right.
Is it connected to the airport, though?
Well, yes, it's interesting that the airport and Charles de Gaulle have the same name, but they're not related in any way.
Okay.
This one's an easy one. It's a gimme. Near the gates and within 2 cities there will be scourges, the like of which was never seen. Famine within plague, people put out by steel, crying to the great immortal God for relief. What do you think?
It's got to be The Tale of Two Cities?
Well, it is about 2 cities. It's going to be.
I am not doing well right now, so
Yeah, I got nothing. What do we got?
All right. It's also important to remember his quatrains were not laid out in any sort of chronology respecting a future calendar. And only 3 out of almost 1,000 had any dates at all attached to them. Well,
it's the 27 Ronin.
well, that is obviously a clear as day prediction of the twin bombings of Nagasaki and Hiroshima in the summer of 1945.
I was in the right country.
Do I have to spell it out for you? Okay, here's one of the most often cited quatrains. This one is a real mic drop for Nostradamus stands, and it's a rare double quatrain. Okay, here's quatrain the first. From the depths of the west of Europe, a young child will be born of poor people. He who by his tongue will seduce a great troop. His fame will increase towards the realm of the east. And the second one, beasts ferocious with hunger will cross the rivers. The greater part of the battlefield will be against Hister. Into a cage of iron will the great one be drawn when the child of Germany observes nothing.
Okay, I actually remember this one from the documentary that he got Hitler's name wrong by one letter. Mm-hmm. So it's right because it was Hister, not Hitler.
You're very, very warm. In fact, you're red hot.
It's Hitler. Yes, it's the World War II.
Yes, this is the famous premonition about the rise of Adolf Hitler in World War II.
Ding ding. What do I win?
All of it.
I was going to say
Sudetenland.
it was about Gerard Depardieu starring
God. Yeah. Okay. You are in the Nostradamus business here because you'll see in a minute. This is the famous premonition about Hitler. Never mind that Hitler was not born out of poverty, but comfortably the middle class.
Right.
The thread this yo-yo hangs on is the word, as Doug said, Hister. His devotees demand, see, he was just one letter off of Hitler's name.
Right.
So close enough is as good as for prophecy as it is for horseshoes and hand grenades, I guess. And that would be impressive if the word hister didn't mean something else entirely. Right. It is commonly known as the Latin name for the Danube River.
Okay, sure.
Oh, well, at least you tried. Okay, here's a big one. You ready? This is another double quatrain, so just get the imagery in your head.
Okay.
In the year of the new century and 9 months, from the sky will come a great king of terror. The sky will burn at 45 degrees. Fire approaches at the new great city. And here's the second one. In the city of God, there will be a great thunder. 2 brothers torn apart by chaos. While the fortress endures, the great leader will succumb. The third big war will begin when the city is burning.
I know
this one's easy.
I got
this one's easy. It's WrestleMania. It's to do with Ric Flair and it's Trump Jr. It's Trump Jr. and Eric.
What do you think, Doug?
It's Thanos. It's obviously Thanos.
Well,
that's what I said. Trump Jr.
You're both pretty cold. That is clearly predicting the attacks of September 11th, 2001.
Oh, right, of course. Yeah.
What's most interesting about Nostradamus writing that is that he didn't. Not a single word of it. The second quatrain was written in 1997 by a Canadian college student named Neil Marshall to illustrate how useless and fungible Nostradamus's predictions could be by inventing a fake one for discussion in an online essay.
Oh, that's awesome.
The first quatrain was written and tacked on to the second one after the attacks by some anonymous internet Nostradamustan. So the entire thing is a turducken of fabrication. Half to demonstrate the absurdity of Nostradamus's predictive value, and the other half to unironically drive the point home.
That's fantastic.
It's 100% fake, but constantly cited as real, as proof of his prognostications by his fans. So in addition to the vaporous vagueness of the secondary, quote, original source material and the often terrible mistranslations of them, there is a massive cottage industry of fake, altered, or Frankendomist, that's a word I made up, fakes. And that seems to be the bulk of the In Search Of and the History Channel funneled misinformation on Nostradamus out there. There are many Nostradamunican, that's another word I made up, thank you, prophecy inflators out there, but one of the worst offenders was Erica Cheatham, who wrote several highly embellished, quote, biographies of the 16th century prophet, fudging and grinding his quatrains madly to force them to predict future events. And when the dates certain came and went, she just put out a new edition with freshly moved goalposts, awaiting the football that would never pass through them once again.
Yeah. That's how you do it.
Yeah.
Can I make a prediction that it's never a good idea to listen to a woman named Cheatham?
Yeah.
Or a man.
That's a man? Sorry.
No, it's a woman, Erica. Her 1965, quote, work, The Prophecies of Nostradamus, The Man Who Saw Tomorrow, went on to be adapted into a, quote, documentary featuring Orson Welles in 1980.
Amazing.
It is an incredibly fabulous failure of historical research and scholarship featuring incredibly corny and underproduced historical reenactments that actual scholars of Nostradamus's life and of the time period say are totally absurd. And I know it's hard to believe that the titan of cinema, Orson Welles, would get himself mixed up with such embarrassing rubbish.
No.
But then you might not know about the late-stage Orson Welles and the kind of work he was willing to take.
Yeah, I was going to say, it doesn't take Nostradamus to predict that Orson Welles will take your $250
Exactly.
to do
And a
whatever.
lobster and champagne lunch. Please
Right.
check the show notes for his attempt at making a commercial for Paul Masson champagne at about the same time. Citizen Kane, it is not.
That is one of, like, if listeners,
It's wonderful.
if you have not watched
it's amazing.
that
Yeah.
series
I
of
literally-
bloopers,
Like, as an actor, one of my favorite things in the world is to now start a line with, yeah, French
Or it just goes,
champagne.
in one of them, he just goes, "Mer." That's how he opens. The French.
Yeah.
So to finish, I would like to further prove the utter futility of looking for predictive utility in anything our dearly departed Nostradamus may or may not have written. Here are some actual quatrains of his. These are real, picked randomly from the piles, with what I think they did or should have predicted, and you're going to see Dan predicted something very strange here. Number one, the year that Saturn and Mars are equal fiery, the air very dry, parched long meteor, through secret fires a great place blazing from burning heat, little rain, warm wind, wars, incursions. Now this obviously predicts the startling twin events of NASA landing the Perseverance rover on the cold surface of Mars on the same day that Raphael Edward Cruz, the shame of Calgary, incursioned to the warm winds of Cancun as carefree as a child on a summer holiday on their brand new bike.
Yeah.
All right, number two. This is a real quatrain. Promptly will one build a bridge of boats to pass the army of the great Belgian prince, poured forth inside and not far from Brussels, passed beyond, 7 cut up by pike. Now, any fool could see that this presaged crazy person actor Gerard Depardieu,
Boom.
moving from France to neighboring Belgium in 2012 to avoid paying taxes and to have more direct access to mayonnaise and bountiful horse meats. Sorry, Belgian listeners.
that's
you
a
guys,
Gerard
I literally-
Dipper don't.
Yeah. Boom.
Yeah, how you pulled that out of the hat earlier, Dan, I have no idea.
Because it was a stunt to hawk my new book of quatrains that will be coming out next week.
Oh, excellent.
So-
The Depardieuery.
Yeah, exactly.
Alas, what ambition foreign princes have. Take careful heed lest they come into your country. There should be terrible dangers, and in many countries, even in Vienna. This is clearly a warning to any country with luxury real estate for sale to beware the Trump princelings arriving on your shores with shady investment streams.
That's two. That's two that
That's
I
also
predicted.
two. They will welch on all debts and consume all your cocaine, White Claw, and Vienna sausages. Number 4, the great credit of gold and abundance of silver will cause honor to be blinded by lust. The offense of the adulterer will become known, which will occur to his great dishonor, which, of course, is a prophecy about Trump fixer Michael Cohen writing a check for $130,000 out of his own bank account to pay hush money to adult film actor Stormy Daniels to keep her quiet about what she has described as, quote, the worst 90 seconds of my life.
I think what you've just done, Uncle Mark, is disproved your own thesis about his non-predictive abilities, because clearly you figured out what he was talking about.
Boom, the Ouroboros, I have come full circle. The snake is eating its tail.
That's right.
And finally, number 5, the cause of her death will be issued from Florence. One time before drunk, by young and old, by the 3 lilies, they will give her a great pause, save through her offspring as raw meat is dampened. This obviously predicted the death of the beloved Mrs. Brady, Florence Henderson, at the hands of the disgraced racist TV chef Paula Deen via carelessly over-moistened meat in what would prove to be Mrs. Brady's final, fatal, and very damp chicken fried steak. So, that's the story of the prophecies of Michel de Nostradamus, everyone. There are not prophecies there at all. They are at best Rorschach tests, giving any reader of them the ability to reflect their own time and place in history and their own judgments into what are just amusing, meaningless haikus. And remember, what we always say, it's usually when we're talking about the Bible, if a thing can mean anything, it means nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, well, go ye forth and eat some damp meat.
Yes, I love that. I literally just clicked through the whole catalog of his things, and that was one. Saved through her offspring as raw meat is dampened.
I think
Yikes.
damp meat is just meat. Non-damp meat is jerky.
I feel like I am going to start a metal band called Damp Meat.
And I think the level of dampness either goes from just wet meat or all the way to stew. So
Yeah, there you go.
that you have Nostradamus to thank for that recipe. So that's
God
it,
damn
guys.
I can't believe you got to do Nostradamus. That pisses me off.
Yeah, you know what? There's so much fucking bullshit out there about him. It's really hard to find, critical critiques. It's kind of difficult.
I had to do flat earthers. You get to do Nostradamus.
You should have predicted it.
And the History Channel is still hawking him as a prophet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's garbage. Anyway, that's that.
All right.
All right.
Moving
Let's
on.
move on.